entire sunnah that addresses these issues, and then there's an entire rich history of contribution by great Muslims, and also a paradigm that's offered through our jurisprudence, through our fiqh, which is based on the sunnah, to deal with these issues. So the first hadith that we're going to start off with, it's a really interesting hadith, and it does deal with sort of some current events that we're seeing in the news and that deal with issues of justice. And it's a hadith that's narrated by Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, لَيْسَ لِإِبْنِ آدَمَ حَقٌّ فِي سِوَى هَذِهِ الْخِصَالِ. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that there are no rights that the son of Adam is more entitled to than these four rights. So he says there are no rights that the son of Adam is more entitled to than these four rights. And he says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Baytun yaskunuh. The first thing is a shelter, a home that he can dwell in. Then he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَثَوْبٌ يُوَارِي عَوْرَتَهُ, and a garment that would cover his nakedness. Then he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَجِلْفُ الْخُبْزِ وَالْمَاءِ, and a loaf of bread, a piece of bread, and water. So he said four things, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the son of Adam is entitled to: a home to live in, a garment to cover his awrah. Now the awrah, as we know, are the things that are mandatory for a person to cover. Okay? So essentially the hijab for men and women, right? The things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made mandatory to cover for the men and for the women. For the men, that being between the navel and the knees. For the women, being that other than the hands and the face. And the Prophet ﷺ said, a piece of bread and water. And I want to first address, I'm going to give you guys a clue as to something that's really fascinating about this hadith. Who is the narrator of the hadith? Did anyone catch the narrator of the hadith? Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu anhu. And there's a story that's famous about Uthman and water, right? Which we'll talk about inshallah ta'ala in this halaqah. But sometimes you don't notice the narrator of the hadith as you're going through it. But first and foremost, the language that the Prophet ﷺ uses in this hadith is really interesting. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions something along these lines in the Quran, along the lines of entitlement to certain things, rights that are actually assigned to you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are actually tangible, physical rights. And Allah azza wa jal mentions, وَالَّذِينَ فِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ مَعْلُومٌ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions people of sadaqah, people of charity. And He says, and in their wealth there's an acknowledged right. حَقٌّ مَعْلُومٌ, an acknowledged right. لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ, for the needy and the destitute. The sa'il is the one who asks. The mahroom is the one who's forbidden from asking for some reasons. Either it's self-imposed, that person has a form of iffah, a form of shyness, or that person is forbidden by law or by culture or society. But the point is that people understand that with the wealth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to them, beyond money, their property, anything that they have, there is an assigned right, haqqun ma'loom, both for the one that will ask you, and it's upon the person who has to actually search for people in need.